I apologized every night at 8:30. And everybody tuned in to find out what I was apologizing for.
Paul Newman, the legend with the deep blue eyes and a smile that once melted the world, was the custodian of Hollywood's most shocking secrets, from its golden age secrets that could dismantle the revered image we have cherished for decades. Before his death, Newman left behind diaries that revealed the whole truth that Hollywood was in reality a rotten, deceitful underworld. In that world, the leading actors lived a life of such unbridled promiscuity that they knew no limits, readily diving into nightly homosexual revelries, only for many to end in mysterious deaths due to the AIDS epidemic. One of them, the man who had starred alongside hundreds of screen sirens, turned out to have lived a lie, for his heart belonged to another man. Let us explore the dark side of the 7 golden age stars we thought we knew completely, as disclosed by Newman before his passing. 1. Rock Hudson, the gay icon, who died of the AIDS epidemic. Rock Hudson was a Hollywood cinematic icon, embodying the image of a muscular male god in films like Magnificent Obsession, 1954, and a series of romantic comedies with Doris Day, such as Pillow Talk, 1959. He was once nominated for an Oscar, a top star at Universal Studios, yet behind the perfect facade lay a double life. A gay man who had to conceal his sexuality to protect his career during a time of heavy prejudice. Rumors about Hudson's homosexual orientation began in the 1950s. Confidential magazine threatened to expose his same-sex relationships in 1955. To quell the scandal, his agent Henry Wilson, a notorious figure in managing gay male stars, arranged a sham marriage to his secretary Phyllis Gates on November 9, 1955. The marriage lasted 3 years, ending in divorce in 1958, being nothing more than a staged public dating spectacle. Hudson lived in fear of being exposed, yet still attended secret gay parties in Palm Springs and gay bars in Los Angeles. He was blackmailed and followed, but friends described him as cheerful, confident in himself, and by no means a tormented soul. Hudson even held a gay wedding with actor Jim Nabors in 1976. In a secret recording made by a private detective for Gates, Hudson admitted to having a homosexual relationship the very day after their wedding. Paul Newman recounted that out of everyone, Henry Wilson was his first lover and agent who created Hudson's image, but also demanded intimate exchange. Newman witnessed Hudson's true love, Lee Garlington, a stockbroker and supporting actor, from 1962 to 1965. They dated, secretly went to fairs, and Garlington first went public in 2015, 30 years after Hudson's death. Jack Coates was a close friend and introduced many relationships, while Tom Clark, his publicist, stayed by Hudson's side until the very end and wrote the memoir Rock Hudson, Friend of Mine. His last lover was Mark Christian, who lived with Hudson until 1985. After Hudson's death, Christian sued the estate for emotional distress, alleging Hudson had slept with him after knowing he had been diagnosed with HIV since June 1984. Christian won the lawsuit, receiving $5.5 million after an appeal. George Nader, actor and close friend, received the majority of the estate and once sent anonymous letters to 4 of Hudson's ex-lovers in Palm Springs, advising them to get tested for HIV. Furthermore, Hudson had many brief flings, including secret stars whose names he never disclosed. Hudson was diagnosed with AIDS on June 5, 1984. He kept it a secret for over a year, but his health deteriorated while filming Dynasty. During a kissing scene with Linda Evans, he was anxious about transmitting the virus, only gently touching her lips and using mouthwash, calling it the worst day of his life. On July 25, 1985, his publicist publicly announced he had AIDS to secure experimental treatment in Paris. This unintentionally outed him as gay, causing a public shock because AIDS was then called the gay plague. Hudson's death was a historical turning point for the United States as donations for AIDS research doubled afterward, and the U.S. Congress allocated $221 million just days later. It helped shift AIDS from a gay disease to a global health issue, changing social attitudes and stimulating research during the Reagan era. If Rock Hudson was the gay icon of that era, then Anthony Perkins was a discreet homosexual known only to Newman and those in the inner circle. 2. Anthony Perkins, the discreet homosexual who kept his tragedy until the end. The second figure Newman mentioned is Anthony Perkins. The star of Psycho lived so discreetly that rumors about his sexual orientation had to be dug up from backstage anecdotes. Newman witnessed Perkins' relationship with Tab Hunter, the handsome star of the same era. They began dating in 1955, a relationship that lasted 4 years, but both had to keep it a secret due to public opinion and social prejudice. In his autobiography, Hunter described Perkins as a devoted lover, but both had to play roles on the stage of life, bracing themselves against every curious gaze. Besides Tab Hunter, Perkins also had relationships with many other same-sex partners, including photographer Christopher Makos, dancer Grover Dale, and musician Patrick Loiseau. They dated throughout the 50s, watching films together in desolate coastal areas, sleeping together in cramped boarding houses to large villas. At the private parties in Hollywood Hills, Newman saw Perkins quietly leave early, avoiding the young women arranged by the studio to accompany him. Instead, he sought out Grover Dale, the talented dancer from Broadway, who later became Perkins's longest-lasting romance, extending for 13 years like an unofficial marriage. Newman once heard Dale recount the nights they spent together in a small apartment in Greenwich Village, where Perkins could be himself without having to play the straight guy role the press demanded. In the late 1960s, Perkins met Barry Berenson, an American photographer, and this relationship led to marriage in 1973. Berenson knew Perkins was gay, but accepted the marriage, and they had 2 sons, Osgood Perkins, who later became a director, and Elvis Perkins, a musician. This marriage was both an emotional choice and a way for Perkins to stabilize his life while shielding his private life from public scrutiny. Perkins's career continued to soar parallel to his discreet private life. The role of Norman Bates in Psycho became a classic icon, but his complex real life also made the character more haunting. The way he lived, loved, and concealed himself reflected a Hollywood where the glamour on screen covered up the real tragedies of private life. When HIV was diagnosed in 1990, Perkins kept it an absolute secret, even from his family. Newman was one of the few who knew the truth through a brief phone call. "Paul, I don't want to become an icon. I just want to die as a regular man." On September 12, 1992, when Perkins died of AIDS-related pneumonia at his home in Los Angeles, Newman stood silently outside the window watching the ashes scattered quietly according to his will. His son director Osgood Perkins once emphasized that his father's secrets and pressures deeply influenced his creative career. Not only Perkins, but another figure also loved people of the same sex, yet was deeply forbidden by social prejudice. That was the famous legend James Dean. 3. James Dean, forced to date. Many women to prove he was normal, Paul Newman never wanted to be a storyteller, but the hot afternoons in 1955 on the set of East of Eden seared into his memory a secret that all of Hollywood deliberately covered up. When James Dean stepped out of his silver Porsche 550 Spyder nicknamed Little Bastard Newman, immediately realized Jimmy was not just rebelling with speed, but with himself. During breaks between scenes, Dean often disappeared into the studio's hidden corners, where Newman knew well that the exchanged glances with Sal Mineo, the young man playing Plato, were meant to conceal a clandestine romance. Newman once witnessed Dean and Rogers Brackett, an older radio producer, leaving a private party in Hollywood Hills in 1951. Brackett was the one who paved the way for Dean with his first roles, later blackmailing him with his own love letters and photographs. Newman overheard an argument in a Chateau Marmont hotel room. Dean screamed that he was not a toy to be exchanged for fame, but still returned because he needed the roles. That was the first time Newman understood that in Hollywood, bedroom affairs were not just passion but currency. During the long nights in Greenwich Village in 1952, Newman knew Dean lived with William Bast, his UCLA roommate, and later his secret lover for 5 years. They shared a small apartment where Dean could shed the straight guy facade imposed by Warner Brothers. Bast told Newman that Dean once said, "I am not homosexual, but I am also not living with one hand tied behind my back." That quote, although vague, became an implicit confession that Dean never dared to make public. Newman clearly remembered the moment Dean met Pier Angeli in 1954. The only romantic relationship with a woman he witnessed. They almost married, but Angeli's mother fiercely objected, calling Dean an eccentric. Newman stood outside the church door when Angeli called off the wedding, seeing Dean sitting in his Porsche, eyes red but not crying. Later, he understood that the romance was Dean's last attempt to prove he was normal, even though his heart already belonged to men like Marlon Brando. Despite living truthfully to himself, James Dean's death came too soon on September 30th, 1955, when he was only 24 in a car accident near Cholame, California. Dean was driving his Porsche 550 Spyder to a sports car race in Salinas when he collided with a Ford Tudor. None of these male stars could openly share their gay story, not even Montgomery Clift. He had to live in agony in his own tragedy. 4. Montgomery Clift, the lonely soul who yearned for love. Montgomery Clift was one of the brightest and most complex stars of 1950s Hollywood. He was considered a pioneer of the method, acting alongside Marlon Brando and James Dean. In his early career, Newman knew Clift had a deeply emotional relationship with screenwriter and author William Bast. Bast lived with him for many years and later revealed that the two had one night together in a hotel in Borrego Springs. Bast described Clift as an extremely sensitive person, both strong and vulnerable, an artist always seeking genuine human connection. However, they had to completely conceal this relationship because Hollywood at the time was intolerant of gay or bisexual individuals, especially a star at the peak of his fame. During breaks between scenes with John Wayne Clift often disappeared into the hidden corners of the trailer, where Newman knew well that the secret meetings with Jack Larson, the Jimmy Olsen of Superman, were not for script discussion. During the long nights in Greenwich Village in 1952, Newman knew Clift lived with William LaMessina, a stage actor and lover for 3 years. They shared a small apartment where Clift could shed the perfect man veneer imposed by Paramount. LaMessina told Newman that Clift once said, "I'm not ashamed, Paul. I'm just tired of pretending." That quote, although gentle, became an implicit confession that Clift never dared to make public. Newman clearly remembered the moment Clift met Elizabeth Taylor in 1951 on the set of A Place in the Sun, the deepest platonic relationship of his life. Taylor tried to seduce Clift, but failed, then introduced him to her gay friends to help him relax. However, Clift later had a severe car accident in 1956, disfiguring his face, and from then on, his life descended into a long series of obsessions. he became addicted to alcohol tranquilizers and increasingly isolated himself from the world. Friends recounted that Clift seemed never to overcome the guilt, loneliness, and societal misunderstanding of his hidden sexual orientation. Finally, Montgomery Clift passed away on the night of July 23, 1966, at his home in New York at the age of 45. The official cause was recorded as a heart attack, but those close to him suggested it was the consequence of many years of stress, alcohol, and tranquilizers. His close friend Elizabeth Taylor was one of the few attendees at the funeral, along with a few old friends, all of whom said Clift had died of sorrow before his heart stopped beating. What do you think about Clift's sad life? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Now let us move on to another male star one who loved hundreds of men in Hollywood. B5. Tab Hunter, the American dream who lived two lives. Tab Hunter was once the dream of millions of American teenage girls. His beauty was nearly surreal, golden hair gleaming under studio lights, a smile as bright as the promise of a perfect post-war America. Yet behind the brilliance, amidst the blinding flashes of cameras and the fervent adulation Tab, Hunter lived a life fraught with fear. For one secret, if merely hinted at, was potent enough to destroy the entire career empire that Hollywood had meticulously crafted. He was a homosexual. In an era where purity, masculinity, and moral standard were the very tenets Hollywood constructed for the public, a person like Tab Hunter had no right to be himself. When rumors about his sexual orientation spread after an arrest at a private party, the studio immediately counterattacked. They arranged for him to date Natalie Wood, so the public would witness a normal and romantic affair. The photos of them holding hands on the street, radiant smiles and all, were but a sophisticated facade. Hunter would later say, "I lived two lives, one for them and one for myself. Both utterly exhausted me." In the maelstrom of deceit and stage lights, Tab Hunter met Anthony Perkins, the star of Psycho, the only man who could see through the loneliness hidden in his eyes. Perkins was intelligent, sensitive, and also concealed himself behind a similar mask. Between the two, a quiet, fragile, and perilous love blossomed. They dated in the shadows, avoiding all eyes, fleeting evenings in apartments with locked doors, the fear of being discovered always looming like a death sentence. The studio knew this well, and they mandated that it must end. Perkins was forced to break up with Hunter to protect both their careers. The relationship ended like a silent fracture, but within Tab Hunter's heart, it never truly vanished. Later, he found rare tranquility with Alan Glazer, a young producer who became his partner and companion for over 3 decades. With Glazer, Tab finally dared to live truthfully, dared to smile without pretense. When youth and fame had receded, he looked back on it all with a calm yet mournful voice. "I don't regret having loved. I only regret having to hide it." In 2005, when Hollywood had changed, Tab Hunter stepped into the light for the last time. In his memoir, Tab Hunter Confidential, he publicly disclosed his story. He recounted the years spent in concealment, the clandestine dates, the trembling midnight phone calls. And when the book became a documentary, the world realized behind the idolized image of the ideal American boy was a gay man suffocated by the world. On July 8, 2018, just 3 days before his 87th birthday, Tab Hunter drew his last breath in the arms of Alan Glazer. Death came suddenly, a heart attack due to a blood clot. People said he passed away as lightly as a breath, as if he had finally found freedom. More than any of his male contemporaries, Cary Grant even cohabited with his partner, disregarding all slander because he had never been afraid. 6. Cary Grant lived with partner Scott for many years. Cary Grant immigrated to the U.S. in 1920, starting in vaudeville, signing with Paramount in 1931, and becoming a leading star ranked second on the list of greatest male actors. He lived a life of abandon, particularly as rumors began to spread intensely when Grant lived with actor Randolph Scott for nearly a decade. The two shared a Malibu villa, hosted parties, took photos, cooked, and even appeared in pictures published by magazines with the headline "Hollywood's Happiest Bachelor Friends." In the photos, they wore bathrobes, laughing with each other amidst romantic settings, causing whispers in the media of the time. Some believed this was a pure friendship, while many others suggested it was a hidden love. Film historian Mark Glancy once revealed that Paramount Studios deliberately staged these images of two perfect men living together to keep them in the public eye, little knowing that this very act ignited decades of speculation. Newman, however, confirmed the love between the two was true. Cary Grant never admitted or denied anything. He evaded all questions, merely smiling and saying, "People believe what they want to believe." Nevertheless, those close to him recounted that Grant always carried a strange loneliness. A man so beautiful he seemed unreal, yet who never fully belonged to anyone. Many described him as warm yet distant, an actor who always played Cary Grant even after leaving the set. Randolph Scott himself once said, "No one really knows Cary Grant. Sometimes I think even he doesn't know." Of course, Grant also had high-profile marriages with women. On November 29, 1986, while preparing for a show in Davenport, Iowa, he suddenly suffered a severe cerebral hemorrhage and passed away at the age of 82. Finally, let us witness a great screen hero, Marlon Brando, an icon of strength who nonetheless wept for the man he loved. #7. Marlon Brando, the lifelong loner who lost the man he loved. Paul Newman once said, "If Hollywood was a stage full of shadows, then Marlon Brando was the brightest burning light, but also the light that burned itself out." He said this looking back at the 1950s, 1960s, when Brando was still an inviolable monument, the man every man wanted to be and every woman desired to possess. But Newman, who witnessed both his friend's decline and glory, understood clearly that behind Brando's handsome face and solid shoulders was a ripped soul yearning to be loved, yet terrified of love. The rumors began to spread. James Dean. The young man with the sorrowful gaze was the first name mentioned. Some said Dean was obsessively infatuated with Brando, others that Brando was the seducer. Newman once heard an old director recount that Dean had left a leather jacket in Brando's room as a mark of love. Then there was Richard Pryor, the black comedian, whose wife confirmed he had once slept with Brando. But for Newman, what shocked him the most were not these fleeting affairs, but the affection between Brando and Wally Cox, his childhood best friend, a gentle soul Brando never forgot. Tabloids like Confidential and Photoplay hinted at his disinterest in gender, especially after a photo of him with Wally Cox, his childhood friend rumored to be his longtime lover. In 1976, Brando publicly admitted in an interview with a French journalist, "Homosexuality is so fashionable that it's no longer news. Like many men, I have also had homosexual experiences, and I am not ashamed of it." He considered it a normal experience, not an identity, and even joked, "If someone thinks Jack Nicholson and I are lovers, let them think it." I find that very funny. Newman once visited Brando's home after Cox died. He saw Brando embracing his friend's urn placed right beside his bed, whispering as if speaking to the living, "If Wally were a woman, we would have been married." Brando said, his eyes distant. Newman did not reply. He knew this was no longer friendship, but a bond that transcended all human definition. Brando had loved a nameless love, forbidden from being acknowledged, yet so enduring that he carried it until his final days. Hollywood at the time could not accept a Marlon Brando who loved men. He still married, still had children, still played roles that made women swoon. But Newman clearly saw the loneliness in his eyes, a type of solitude felt by one who knows the world only loves a fake version of them. Late nights they sat together, Newman drinking bourbon, Brando drinking milk, and both remained silent. "Are you ever afraid?" Newman asked. Brando merely smiled. "I'm only afraid when I stop loving." In 2004, Newman read the news of Brando's death. He was not surprised. Perhaps Brando had died long ago the moment Hollywood turned him into a legend. People said Brando died of lung failure, but Newman believed what killed him was the sorrow that was never acknowledged. Brando's ashes were scattered in Death Valley, alongside Wally Cox's ashes, exactly as he wished. Two men, two souls finally rested together after a lifetime separated by prejudice. Newman was the one who knew all the gay names from the Golden Age because he himself was one of them. Newman also fell into an unending love with his close friend Redford. Paul Newman and Robert Redford created one of the rarest and deepest relationships in cinematic history. They first met in the late 1960s when director George Roy Hill decided to cast the two stars in the lead roles of Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid 1969. From that point, a connection began that cannot be explained by ordinary words. Not just colleagues, not just friends, but an affection difficult to name transcending the boundaries of career and time. When filming Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Newman was a veteran star while Redford was an emerging face. However, Newman showed no condescension. On the contrary, he pulled Redford into his world, teasing, encouraging, and caring for him like an older brother. Redford once recounted, "I didn't just learn acting from Paul, I learned how to be a person." During the long, tiring filming days in the Utah desert, they sat side by side drinking beer, laughing loudly, sharing private stories that only those who truly trusted each other would dare to utter. That friendship began then and would last for 4 decades. All of Hollywood clearly saw the strange chemistry between these two men. When The Sting 1973 was released, audiences were not only captivated by the plot, but also by the way they looked at each other, joked with each other, and were in sync with every raised eyebrow. The press called them the perfect screen couple, the two halves of an artistic soul. Newman once quipped, "If I were a woman, I would have married him." The remark made Redford burst out laughing, but then he just went silent and nodded, as if he understood Newman was speaking the truth. Some recount that they once spent an entire weekend just driving around Candlewood Lake, not speaking much, only listening to the engine and the wind whistling through the windows. They understood each other without words. Newman would make coffee while Redford sat adjusting his camera. They lived like two life partners, sharing every small habit, every moment of silence in their souls. Both were private men, but those who witnessed them together all said the look they exchanged was not like friendship. Newman knew Redford feared loneliness, and Redford understood Newman always felt lost amidst fame. Perhaps they never admitted that love, but in every moment they shared, they lived it, a silent, profound love that required no naming. In their private lives, they were still in frequent contact, collaborated on charity projects, and even lived close to each other in Connecticut. Newman once gave Redford a Porsche as a birthday gift just to tease him by, crushing it into a block of metal and sending it with a card that read, "For you," along with a lesson in humility. Redford retaliated by having the words "Nice try, Butch" painted on Newman's wall. They joked like children, but beneath the teasing was a deep affection that both knew well it was the one truly important relationship in their lives. Newman once said in a 1980 interview, "Bob is the person I trust most in this business. I can tell him everything, even things I haven't told my wife." That statement made many question, was there something deeper than friendship between these two men? Naturally, no one dared to confirm it. Hollywood at the time had no language for such affection, where even one intimate glance could be twisted into a scandal. But for those who witnessed them together, that friendship clearly carried a special energy, almost like love, but without needing physical touch. When Newman passed away in 2008, Redford did not appear in public for weeks. When he finally spoke, Redford's voice trembled. "I have lost my best friend, the person who understood me more than anyone. I never had another person like Paul." Those close said Redford fell into a long period of depression, refusing new movie roles and avoiding mentioning Newman's name because every memory is too painful. That was no longer the sorrow of a colleague, but the loss felt by someone who had just lost half of their soul. Today, many film scholars call the relationship between Newman and Redford Hollywood's prototypical bromance, but if one stops only at the word bromance, it may not be enough. They were not just close friends. They were men who dared to love each other with trust, respect, and an affection so pure that the world had to invent a new name for it. Their story, even without a confession or a public kiss, still makes people believe that there are some connections that need no definition, and perhaps that is love in its purest form. The list of 7 gay men Paul Newman alluded to in his private writings has opened up an entire new chapter in film history. Among them are names once considered absolute symbols of masculinity, from Rock Hudson Montgomery Clift to Marlon Brando Cary Grant and Tab Hunter. 7 stars, 7 lonely souls living in an era where truth was buried beneath a veneer of glamour. And now the remaining question is, will Hollywood have the courage to look back at these individuals with compassion and truth instead of prejudice and curiosity? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. If you also wish to continue exploring the untold secrets of legendary cinematic icons, press subscribe to join me in tracing the footsteps of those brilliant figures where the light and shadow of Hollywood merge into one.